from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London and already trying to open my diary and figure out when I'm going to see friends and family before heading off to Australia for the men's and women's Ashes. I've got a Christmas lunch lined up for this Sunday. It might be the earliest Christmas lunch I've ever had in October, but that's okay if it means seeing important people before I go away. Bring on the Christmas pud.
It's Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney, and all your Christmases will come at once when you get to Australia, Ali. And look at me. I might be wearing stripes from incarceration, but in fact they're stripes of celebration because we're out of lockdown. It's a miracle.
Good to hear that, Jim. This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio. I'm glad to be back home. Great to be back on Stumped as well. I was away in Kathmandu doing the Nepal Everest Premier League. Great tournament. Good to be a part of Nepal's rise in the world of cricket. Lots of friends took me around. Kathmandu is a great city. Of course, unfortunately, though, I hurt my shoulder a bit, which is such a dampener. However, despite that, I'm going for a trek with my boys to the Himalayas right after this program. But great to be back.
I'm very envious of that, Charu. It sounds absolutely amazing, trekking through the Himalayas. Sometime we will come with you on Stumped. We'll do one from atop a mountain. Okay, it feels like a lot's been going on this week, doesn't it? Finally, there's been a little bit of clarity around the men's Ashes. We'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, on the Indian Premier League, well, it's been a year like no other, hasn't it? The first half of the tournament was played in India before it was suspended for 4.5 months because of COVID, and it resumed then in the UAE in September. Charu, what have you made of the resumption of the tournament? There's been some extraordinary finishes, haven't there? And not least Delhi Capitals and Kolkata Knight Riders in order to get to the final. But yeah, how have you found it, the resumption?
Yeah, that was one strange match. I think most people have dealt with it fairly well, despite this fracture midway through the IPL. Geographically, it doesn't really help because it's a little further away. But I think the performances, you mentioned some thrilling finishes. And of course, all the usual attendant controversies keep it going because that really gets the media, was someone's out or not or what. It does capture, I think, a very great deal of attention here in India. It continues to, even though it was split up this year. But all in all, there's some controversies also about the ratings, whether they've actually slipped a bit or not. But the attention certainly very large once again. It's right in the spotlight. And of course, it's finishing stages. So everybody sort of, centers into the IPL again anyway.
What of Virat Kohli? Because, of course, he has stepped down as Royal Challengers Bangalore captain. He's never won the IPL, though. Does that cast something of a shadow over his captaincy because RCB never won the tournament under him?
But sadly, yes, is the simple answer. I think a lot of people are saying that he's not quite the white ball captain that others in India are, which is a little unfortunate because I think I've bludgeoned this topic to death about the fact that the captain can only do so much. I mean, it's what you have in terms of resources. And of course, T20 just goes by so quickly. But his personal contribution, I don't think you can argue too much about. He wears his heart on his sleeve anyway. He's done reasonably well for RCB over all these years. But yeah, it does rankle, doesn't it? Because he is such a global icon, one of the biggest cricketing heroes in India. And he has not won this title. They've gotten to one final and no more. So yes, there are increasing question marks on his white ball captaincy, which I think is unfair. Of course, he's given the T20 international captaincy up and now the RCB captaincy as well. So for me, it'll be a huge bit of glory missing from his very full cabinet.
What of the men's Ashes then, Jim? Because we know the tour at least has now been confirmed in principle. The ECB still saying there's some critical conditions that need to be met, but there seems to be just details being ironed out. But yeah, preparations stepping up for both sides now, aren't there? England have named their strongest available squad. They've got captain Joe Root and vice-captain Jos Buttler. There's still no Ben Stokes, who has that time out for mental health and recovering post-finger surgery. As far as the Aussies go, Jim, I saw news that young Will Pucovski has suffered another setback potentially, and he's slated to possibly open the batting alongside Warner for the Aussies.
Yes, it's bad news for Pucovski. Hopefully he'll get over it, but he's sustained another knock. They're saying it's up to 10 concussions that he's suffered now from teenage years through to this point as a 23-year-old. Who's played one test and has looked such a promising, productive player for Australia. So who knows where that is going to go. We can only wish him the best. But there's been a bit going on in Australia in the last couple of days around the leadership of cricket administration, I think you could refer to it, with the chairman having to step aside.
Both boards are in disarray, aren't they? Because Ian Watmore left from the ECB as well.
Yes, well, in this case, Earl Eddings stepped aside before I think he fronted the annual general meeting, and he's done that because he's lost support of Western Australia as well as New South Wales and Queensland. So he was in a hopeless position. And most of that with Western Australia has come about because it seems as if Cricket Australia have been struggling to find a way to get that Perth Test match in. And now there's talk that if they start the Sydney Test a little bit earlier, push the Perth Test back 2 days, perhaps they can accommodate the quarantine that's now in place. So we continue to have all these things going on around border closures and how many days you have to spend here and the rest of it. It drives you mad. I mean, to the point where it's very hard to get domestic cricket running. The WBBL will start in Tasmania for the next 2 weeks. New South Wales and Victorian players can't go anywhere at the moment. So who knows what's going to happen in the next 6-8 weeks leading up to the first test.
Will Justin Langer be coach for the Ashes? I'm sure he will be, but this cryptic post that has appeared on social media, Langer quoted an in-depth motivational message. I mean, he's been under quite a bit of scrutiny, hasn't he, of late? There was reports a while back about players being unhappy with his style and coaching methods. So this post on social media, he's talking about people needing to be true to themselves, not changing themselves to appease others. And he posted it from quarantine in the UAE, where the Aussies are busy preparing for the T20 World Cup. How have you read that, Jim? Is this Langer being Langer, or is he feeling pressure?
Someone said he was reposting a message that had been sent from his daughter. So whatever it is, I think it reminded me of my old school motto, esse quam videri, which translated means to be rather than to seem. And I think that's what he's getting at to an extent. But perhaps he needs to go away and read the importance or watch the movie of The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, just to get a little bit of humour into his missives to the players.
Well, it'll unfold, won't it, at the T20 World Cup, and seeing how the men's team get on there under Langer and how far the Aussies can go.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
The ICC Men's 2020 World Cup starts on the 17th of October, so not far away, and 16 teams will compete to be crowned world champions. And of course, we're going to keep you up to date with it all here on Stumped, and we'll always be talking about the biggest stories around the tournament. We thought we would start off by looking at one of the host nations, because matches will be played across Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Sharjah in the UAE, and Muscat in Oman. Now, 10 years ago, there was not a single grass cricket field in Oman, and yet now they're the first associate nation to host and play in a World Cup. Earlier this week, I spoke to Pankaj Khimji, who's the Oman cricket chairman, and he told me how it felt to be a host of the tournament.
I think it's unprecedented. An associate nation hosting a World Cup, an associate nation simultaneously not only hosting it, but also participating in it. And dreams are made of this.
What has the lead up been to get you to this point as a nation on both fronts, being in the tournament, but also being a host?
Look, we played the 2016 tournament where we qualified in Scotland and Ireland, and then went on to play the World Cup T20 in India. And we beat Ireland in that, and it was a great feeling. We're hoping that we'll maintain our position and come and play it again. So I think we're one of the handful of nations who've consistently done it at associate level. So we're extremely proud of the fact that the boys have kept their momentum, they've kept their spirits and kept their playing and fitness there to kind of make it again. Having said that, we are even getting ready to kind of play the ODI in India in 2023, because we're topping the charts as far as the ODI rounds are concerned. So yeah, Oman's done it well so far, and we're hoping to go to Dubai for the round 2 as well.
Describe to us the structure of cricket in Oman in terms of domestically, the pipeline you're creating leading up to the national team.
So basically, we've got, about 1.5 million Asian expats living in Oman. Cricket mad, I would imagine, some of them. We've got a very decent domestic structure where about 85 to 90 teams play from A division down to G division. And we've got a very good Premier League, which is the top 6 or 7 teams which compete against each other. And mostly of them are corporate backed. So most of the players work for the corporate and they play weekend cricket for them. It's a super little way of doing it, whereby, cricket doesn't have to be your breadwinner. It's your work that wins your bread, but also entitles you to play cricket and your passion on the game. So most of the people who've come over here probably missed the mark at a national level in their home countries, fell back on plan B, and that is to go and find work in the Middle East and see whether they can make away with weekend cricket. That's T20 and 50 over both. So it's white ball cricket all the way.
So Oman's ambitions, where would you say your ambitions lie in terms of where you want that national team to get to, where you believe the national team can get to?
I'd love to go and play at ODI World Cup, because I think that is the World Cup, if not the Test Championship. I don't think we're qualified to play the Test Championship. We don't even have a domestic structure which plays multi-day cricket. But an ODI cricket, I'd love to go and play an ODI World Cup. That'll be the ultimate challenge. But if I can maintain my rank 15 plus minus 2 over the next 5 years, I'll be a very happy man.
And in terms of that national setup, you mentioned the expats in the country, but you do have one player in the squad born in Oman. That's right, Sufyan Mahmood. Yeah. What role do you see him playing in terms of getting other native cricketers into the game?
Yes, Alison, what we have is we've brought in a few full-time coaches to come and start the grassroots cricket development program in local schools. We actually have gone and signed a very good understanding with the Ministry of Education, saying we want to roll out a cricket program in the schools. And we said, unless and until we don't go to them, they won't come to us. And I think that's the kind of relationship we want to build. And hopefully, once we've delivered this particular challenge, we will re-embark on our cricketing grassroots development.
And this tournament coming up is obviously a men's tournament, which is what we've been talking about. Is there much move or development around offering cricket for girls in Oman? What is the sort of situation, the cultural situation?
Four, 5 full girls teams here and playing a nice little circuit. And they're very enthusiastic. They actually toured UK 2 years ago.
A final thought then, Pankaj, as regards the T20 World Cup, we've heard the ambitions for the team long term. Ambitions for the team in the tournament. How far do you think they can go?
We're going to Dubai.
Anyone can beat anyone in T20.
We're taking that plane to Dubai to the second round.
We look forward to watching the fortunes of Oman. It's been really interesting to get an insight into cricket in the country. Thank you so much, Pankaj, for joining us.
Thank you, Alison, very much for having me.
So that was the Oman cricket chief, Pankaj Khimji, on his hopes for the tournament. And yeah, as I said, anyone can beat anyone in T20 cricket. I want to get your predictions in a moment, Jim and Charu, about who you think will be there and thereabouts come the final. But first of all, Jim and Pankaj spoke there about, them trying to set up a programme where they go into schools and encourage more kids to play sport. And that's got to be really key, hasn't it, to get them playing at that young formative age?
Yes, I don't know what the predilection to sport in Oman is, but hopefully they can get enough support for the game of cricket. I'm sure football will be somewhere on the agenda there, but yes, it's going to take some time, but good on them for having a go. I think Derek Pringle was out there a few years ago trying to encourage and coach the players who are involved. So it's a step in the right direction, but let's be patient. It's not going to happen overnight, is it?
Yeah, what he was saying then, Charu, the corporate link, i.e. cricketers having jobs and then playing, that reminded me a bit of the railways set up in India, in fact, which has given rise to a lot of the opportunity to a lot of Indian women cricketers. But as far as the T20 World Cup goes, I mean, it was originally scheduled to take place in India, but obviously moved to the UAE because of COVID concerns. And do you think the people of India will be just as invested in the tournament? I mean, I guess they've got used to, in a way, the IPL being played out in the UAE of late.
The Indians are certainly going to be very invested in the T20 World Cup, despite it not happening in India, particularly for the India matches. To my mind, if the rest of the matches were played in India, because they'll be happening in a city near you, you tend to be a little more involved. But non-India matches, I suspect, may suffer a bit because it's not happening in India. So that's the only downside. But yeah, it's creating a lot of noise here in India about the selection to begin with now. There's constant chopping and changing. But the timings suit India in terms of television. So I do think the India match investment is going to be or remain 100%.
So who do you reckon will be in the final, Charu? I'll ask you, Jim, in a moment.
I can't think beyond India and England, because they are possibly the two, most well-rounded teams. But we all love the underdogs, the surprises. I imagine Australia as an underdog. Jim will get to speak in a moment. But I do think in the earlier stages of the tournament, if some of the teams at the bottom of the table can create an upset or two, that is what I'm really looking forward to. But I think India and England.
Yeah, and I think England have a really strong T20 lineup, and they are the number one ranked team in the world at the moment, of course. I think Owen Morgan, not necessarily been informed with the bat of the IPL, has he? But I think he's one of the best captains, and they've got the battery of pace with Tamal Mills in the side, a left armer as well, offering something different, and he's got really good changes of pace as well. With the batting, you've got options, left-hander at the top in David Malan. Again, you come back to those, still missing. Ben Stokes will be a huge miss. But what do you reckon then, Jim, and how strong will the Aussies be?
The Aussies are a bit of an ageing outfit. They got a bloke called Maxwell who can slap it around. He's pretty good. Not sure about Finch and Warner anymore. And I just think they're a bit undermanned in terms of quality spin. I think these pitches are going to get worn. I think the ball's going to turn. And I think India are an absolute shoo-in to play in the final, probably against the West Indies.
Oh, okay. No, England, wow.
He's knocked England right out of the park.
that goes without saying. I mean, England and Australia might be floating around in the finals, but no. India are going to win. They're the best equipped in those conditions.
And what of Pakistan as well? You just never want to count them out, do you? We will see. I think we could be in for some low-scoring thrillers, perhaps. That'd be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but you mentioned Pakistan, and it's a good time to remind everybody that the UAE is virtually their home now for the past 5, 7, 10 years. So they are playing in home conditions.
I think Pakistan winning would be fantastic.
Well, that is it for this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to all of you for listening. We'll speak to you next week. Bye for now.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.